How many of you guys have been reading the book, Purpose-Driven Life? So good, so powerful. I first read that book over 20 years ago. I was in college, and my partner, because this book is recommended to be read with another person, so you guys can talk about it. What is God doing? And my partner at that point was my fiance, who is now my wife, and we were reading this book together over 20 years ago. And by the way, I highly recommend it. If you're trying to wonder if this is the person we want to do life with together, then you better check out God's purpose for your lives. Are we going in the same direction? Are we going in the way that God's calling us to go? So I highly recommend it. Read it with someone, because you never know. You might be married for almost 20 years when you pursue God's purpose together. Can you say amen? Since then, I've read it many times. Here's the thing. I'm reading it again right now. I'm reading it with a man in my crew. It's been powerful. It's been awesome. And I told him this. I said, you got to read it understanding the season that God has you in. Ecclesiastes says there's a time and a season for everything under the heavens. So what season are you in? When I read it 20 plus years ago, I was in a different season of my life. And over the years, I've seen God develop his purpose and plans for my life. I'm 46 years now. I'm reading it very different than I read it when I was like, God, is this the person I'm supposed to marry? It's very different now. Now it's like, God, I got teenagers, God. From the woman you made me marry 20 years ago. So it's a different time. But the beautiful thing is, God will speak to you in the season that you find yourself in right now. Can you say amen? And so we're gonna add the first major purpose that God has for all of us today. And if you have your Bible, our reading is gonna come out of Psalm 95. I don't know if you're still reading and praying through the Psalms. I know I am. If you're not, keep doing what you're doing. You are a terrible wide receiver. No wonder you're not scoring. You're not even going for your routes. Psalm 95, verse 1 through 7 is our reading. Here's what it says. It says, come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. Let us come to him with thanksgiving. Let us sing psalms of praise to him. For the Lord is a great God, a great king above all gods. He holds in his hands the depths of the earth and the mightiest mountains. The sea belongs to him, for he made it. His hands formed the dry land too. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God. We are the people he watches over, the flock under his care. If only you will listen to his voice today. That is the word of the Lord. Can you say amen? When I first felt compelled to do a series on purpose, it came out of this sad reality that we're seeing in our society, how so many people are struggling with meaning and purpose in life. I think it's safe to say that we have a crisis of meaning and purpose in our society right now. We live in one of the greatest countries in the world, and people are hurting, struggling, trying to understand their purpose in life, and they're looking in all the wrong places to try to find meaning, to try to find purpose. And naturally speaking, it makes no sense. How can you live in one of the greatest countries in the world with the best resources available? How is it that we're struggling with our mental health? How is it that we're struggling to even want to live? How is it that we're struggling to even wake up in the morning and we're relying on substances to try to get us through a day? My friends, that is unacceptable. That is not God's will for people to live in this crisis. And it's very clear to me that the reason why we are in this dilemma is because we are going to all the wrong places trying to find meaning and purpose. This series made me go back to my childhood, and I grew up with my dad, and a lot of what I loved came from my dad. I'm a huge soccer fan, and Benfica is my favorite team because of my dad. Benfica is best team in the world. I don't care what you say. Like, it's the best team in the world. I actually got to go to Portugal and watch Benfica play in person with my friend Fernando. He almost got arrested. No, he didn't. But it was wild. It was a crazy experience. We went to their rival stadium, Sporting, and it was like, we might die today. Like, it was, I'm not kidding. Like, they warned us. We had Benfica shirts on. They're like, what are you doing? You're going to get killed. You know, we literally went back and changed our shirts and went neutral. We're like, I'm not a Benfica fan today. I'm just going to watch this game. Celebrating on the inside, like, we scored. But also, my dad is a huge fan of music, and I grew up listening. Believe it or not, I listened to a lot of rock music growing up. Like, some of my favorite bands will blow your mind today. My favorite bands were AC/DC, Van Halen, Meatloaf, Pink Floyd, Aerosmith, of course, Beatles. But it made me think about another one of my favorite bands, U2. In 1987, they came up with this powerful album, and it made me think about a song that to me, really just summarizes the crisis that I'm seeing. The song is titled, "But I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For." I see that in our society right now. I see a lot of people restless. I see a lot of people just trying to find meaning, trying to find purpose, and they're trying so many things and still coming back empty and still coming back like with no meaning and no purpose. And the sad reality is I see those people even in church. We're going everywhere trying to find something, trying to feel alive. But we still haven't found what we're looking for. And this is not new. The Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. We've been wrestling with this forever. In the 4th century, there was a man who was wrestling with meaning and purpose. And he said, I tried in different things. I slept with different women, and I tried the party scene and all of that until he came face to face with the reality that what I'm looking for, only my Creator can give me. And he wrote these powerful words in the 4th century. They resonate so much with us today. Here's what Augustine said in the 4th century about meaning and purpose. He said, you have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are what? Restless until they rest in. My friends, what we're looking for is our Creator God. What we're looking for is the God who created us in the first place. Our dilemma is we are our worst enemies because we take matters into our own hands and think, I can find this on my own. I can go out there and do my thing and be able to find meaning and purpose. And the more we do that, the more God backs away. See, here's the thing with God. God's not going to force his way into your life. God is almost like, hey, then I'll pull back and see. Another man who was wrestling with meaning and purpose, his name is C.S. Lewis. He was an atheist who became a believer. He said in the end, God says, you either say to God, your will be done, or God says, well, then have it your way. And he backs up away from you. Why? Because at the heart of humanity is idolatry. We will replace God with less things. Not only with less things and other people, but here's the sad reality. We will replace God with self. We become the center of our universe. We become the Lord and Savior of our own universe. We think we actually have what it takes to do life without the one who created us in the first place. It makes absolutely no sense, but this is what we're doing, and we've been doing it for a long time. The Bible actually says that this is the dilemma of humans from the beginning. In the book of Romans, look what Paul says in the book of Romans. He put it this way. He says, yes, they knew God. He's talking about humans. They knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or even give him thanks. Gratitude says, I understand that life is a gift. The opposite of thankfulness is entitlement. It's when I think I deserve and I'm in charge. And watch this. And they began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. In other words, you know what this is? This is when I want God to fit my mold. Like, I want God to do my will. Like, instead of praying, your will be done, we say, God, my will be done. And when we go out there, we do life our way. And when it doesn't work out, we blame the real God. Hello, somebody. Right? We think about all these foolish ideas of trying to worship God. As a result, Their minds became dark and confused. My friends, this to me summarizes our society. Dark and confused. Like, I don't know about you, it's getting darker and darker and more confusing. So confusing, we don't even know who is a man or who is a woman anymore. We don't even know what's right and what's wrong. The Bible says there will come a day that we would call evil good and good evil. My friends, we are living in very dark and confused days. All in what? All in the name of finding our own meaning and purpose. We tell little kids, you can be whatever you want to be, do whatever you want to do. There's no consequences, but the consequences is real. It's becoming dark and confusing. Claiming to be wise. Claiming to be wise. In other words, we know what we're doing. They instead become what? You have to understand what the word fool in the Bible is. The word fool in the Bible is used a few times. Another time that it's used, it says, the fool says in his heart, there's no God. In other words, you can look at the whole landscape of the universe and go, nah, there's no creator. I'm my own creator. It's intense what we have done with our lives. And that includes people that go to church. Today, all over this nation, people will go to church, but they still live like they are their own God. So it's not just showing up to church, it's are you actually doing life with this God that created you in the first place? Can you say amen? So the next few weeks, we're going to explore life according to God's purpose, not what we made it. Basically, what Pastor Rick Warren did is summarize the Bible, basically. He wrote this book to help people understand the purpose that God created them for. And you can summarize it in these 5 things. Next 5 weeks, we're going to explore these 5 things. It comes down to this. God created us to worship him, to have fellowship with each other, to develop as disciples, to do ministry, and to engage in evangelism. That's the ultimate purpose that God intended. Now, here's what's fascinating. When you take God out of the picture, you get the reverse of these things. Instead of living a life that is driven by God's purpose, instead of worship, it becomes self-worship, or worship of lesser things than God intended. Instead of fellowship, what are we doing? We're becoming divisive. We're living isolated. We're living in our echo chambers. We are creating more division than we're creating unity when we're living according to our will and our purposes. Instead of discipleship, you know what discipleship is? We just did practicing the way. Discipleship is I am in a process of becoming more and more like Christ. And if I'm not in the process of becoming more like Christ, you know what's happening? I'm in the process of becoming more and more like the Antichrist. See, here's the thing. People think the Antichrist is just this one person is going to come and with the number 666. But if you do your homework, the number 666 means that I live according to my will, not God's will. God's number is 7, the year of completion, of perfection, of holiness. 666 is, hey, this is me, the fullness of me on my own without God. Ministry. In other words, I was created for purpose to serve others. That's what minister means. The word ministry simply means to serve and help people. If you pay attention to what's going on in our society, our politicians used to be called ministers. Why? Because their job, their calling was to serve people. And if you're paying attention, there's no longer the service of people. It's the service of power. It's the service of ego. It's the service of their own desires for their lives. And then evangelism. What is evangelism? It's to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. Unfortunately, what are we spreading? Not good news. We live in an era of bad news, fake news, lies, deceits, all because we have decided to do purpose our way instead of doing purpose God's way. In the next few weeks, we're going to realign ourselves with the way God intended for us to have purpose. Can you say amen? And we begin up top of worship. We got to talk about worship today because it all starts with who you worship. And it all starts with understanding what worship actually means. Sometimes you can be in church and hear buzzwords and never ask the question, but what does it actually mean? If you don't understand worship first, the other purposes will not make sense. They won't align themselves. There's a domino effect when you understand worship. That we were created to worship God. And that this is not like, worship is not like a choice. Everybody worships. Question is, what is the object of your worship? It's universal to worship. If you don't worship God, you will worship something else. So when you understand worship, you understand that it's not just what we just did. We sing some songs to the Lord. That's one way to worship God. But worship is deeper than that. It's an entire lifestyle. And if you're taking notes, worship is basically who captivates your heart and mind. Like who has your attention? Like what makes you wake up in the morning? Worship is who gets your attention, your time, your energy, your money. That's worship. What is the object of your passion? And my favorite part of worship is who or what you enjoy. Do you enjoy God? Do you actually enjoy His presence? See, when you don't have God at the right place in your life, most people don't enjoy God. They endure a worship service. There's a difference. See, when I was doing Purpose-Driven Life with my wife over 20 years ago, I graduated and she had 1 year left. And she was going to school in Boston to become a social worker. And I was living in Rhode Island at that time. But I would drive to go see her on the regular basis. But it felt like I was driving down the street. Why? Because I knew who I was going to go meet with. Like I didn't think about the gas price. I didn't think about the Boston traffic. I wasn't consumed by, this is like 45 minutes of my time going and coming back. Why? Because I knew that the person that I was going to go meet with is actually someone that I enjoy being with. There's a difference when your heart is into something. Now, imagine that without enjoyment. I'd be looking at the gas price. I'd be looking at the traffic. I'd be looking at the time that it takes for me to get from here to there, right? And I would say something like, girl, can we just do this over the phone? Do I really have to go see you in person? And it's funny, but the truth is, that's how a lot of people approach God. Their heart is not in it, so it's a burden. They're not into it. I met someone this week who told me, he said, Pastor, when I was in the world and I was doing drugs, if they told me the best cocaine was 2 hours away, I had no problem driving 2 hours. He says, why do I have a problem now driving to get to the house of God, to worship God? So worship is what you enjoy. In Westminster Catechism, they nailed this. The first question in the catechism is this: what is the chief? Chief is spelled wrong, by the way. I'm African and I know that. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but it wasn't me. And I'm African. If I'm catching something, it must be that obvious, because I can't spell. Man's chief end, oh man, my voice is going, is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. That's why you're here. Did you know that? You're here to glorify God and to enjoy Him. That's the number one purpose of humanity on this earth. Do you enjoy God? Because if you don't enjoy God, then you're not really worshiping Him. Let me show you this picture. Go ahead, throw up that picture of this man. His name is Eric Liddell. Eric Liddell ran in the 1924 Olympics in Paris. Next week, the Olympics will be back in Paris. In 1924, he won a gold medal in the 400 meter and a bronze in the 200 meter at the 1924 Paris Olympics. He could have medaled in the 100, but he refused to run in the 100 meter because it was on Sunday, and he says, I worship God on Sunday. He was a man of God. Here's my favorite quote from Eric Liddell. He said, I believe God made me for a purpose, but He also made me fast. And when I run, I feel His pleasure. That's worship, friends. When you enjoy how God wired you and created you to enjoy life. Some of y'all, you're like, Pastor, when I run, I feel the devil's presence. And I only run from the cops. Why? Because maybe God didn't wire you like that. But the question you gotta ask yourself is, what do you enjoy? Let me give you a simple definition of worship. It's simply this. Worship is everything that you enjoy for the glory of God except sinning. Anything you enjoy in life is because God wired you that way to enjoy life. Eric understood, man, God made me fast and I run and I get excited because, man, God, you blessed me to run. Some of y'all, man, God made you, like our bookkeeper blows my mind. She's been our bookkeeper for over 30 years. You know what she tells me? I love numbers. I'm like, who are you? Like, that is weird. But guess what? She's amazing on what she does. Why? Because God wired her to do what she does, and she loves doing it for the glory of God. What do you enjoy? What do you love to do? I said, God made me a pastor because he knows I can't add. God's like, you got to give this guy something to do. Make him a talker. He can't add for nothing. Worship, my friends, please, write this down. It's whatever you were created to do that brings you pleasure because it gives God pleasure. As a parent, I totally appreciate this on another level now. Parents, I think you can testify to this. Sometimes the best days is to hear your kids play. It gives you pleasure to see your kids doing well, especially when they're not killing each other. Especially when they're getting along and they're helping each other. I don't know about you, one of my favorite things when my kids were smaller was to just hear them in their imagination on the other room, coming up with crazy ideas, concepts. Dinosaurs are in the room. My son thought he was an actual dinosaur. You know, I have to be very careful in this society because I'm like, you can identify yourself as a, no, okay. Honey, you are a dinosaur. Some of these parents, man, need a lot of help. Especially, please, this is important, especially when you're grateful. Because it makes you understand life is a gift. And I am grateful. I don't know about you, there's never a day I don't get up and go, thank you. I'm up. I don't know if you know this is a true story. Some people didn't get up this morning. You're here. That tells me you should be grateful. Because a heart of gratitude is a heart of worship. Whatever you enjoy brings glory to God because worship is a lifestyle. It's how you live. See, please write this down. Worship makes you get over yourself. Because you're not the center of the universe. It was never about you. What's the first line in Purpose Driven Life book? It's not about you. Now let me give you another picture. This picture. This is where we live. We live right here. In the Milky Way galaxy. And we're still finding galaxies. According to scientists, there are not hundreds of galaxies, there's probably billions of galaxies. We are one planet in a solar system. Right now, as we are in this place, we are traveling at 1,000 miles per hour in the middle of nothing, suspended and held together by gravity. Let that sink in for a second. You're not dizzy because gravity is holding you together. You're going at 1,000 miles an hour and you travel around your orbit. We orbit around the solar system every 365.2 days. Happy birthday to you. As far as we know, out of all these planets, this is the only habitable place so far that we've found. The only planet that has an ocean that can give life. I don't know if you know this, but in the ocean has exactly 4% of salt in it. Just enough so you won't kill animals and sustain them. And what's fascinating, your bloodstreams also has 4% of salt. These little details in creation blows my mind. And the reason why I'm bringing this up to you is that we live here, we're traveling 1,000 miles per hour, and we say life is about me. Think about that for a second. This is where you live. You're just one of 7.7 billion people on the face of the planet, and you wake up and you think, I'm amazing. And you are, but not the way you think you are. I don't know about you, but when I think about the planet in the universe, I feel very small. I think about the psalmist who said, who am I, God, that you're mindful of me? Why is God even thinking about me with everything going on in the world? That's the fascinating part. That this God who created the universe, the moons and the stars, you know, stars are born every day. And we can't count them. God says you can't count them. There's so many stars he has, just for fun. God wakes up and creates stars for fun. You wake up and complain for fun. Hey, it blows my mind that we make life about us. When we see the vastness of the universe, that should make us say, God, I can't believe you love me, and you want to have a relationship with me, and you have a plan for my life. I should be surrendering to you, not tell you what to do. How can you tell him? Next time you're praying, complaining, whining, think about this. And think about, again, I'm not trying to make us feel guilty. My goal is to bring perspective. Get a bigger perspective for life, as opposed to the little perspective of self. Can you say amen? Amen? You see, this is why gratitude is worship. The Bible says this, look, 1 Corinthians chapter 10. It says, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it for the glory of God. In other words, when you get perspective, man, you're so thankful that whatever you have in front of you, you are grateful for. Think about it today. You woke up. Not only did you wake up, but you went downstairs. I went downstairs. And what's funny to us is that we will look around in our kitchen and cupboard and go, I got nothing to eat. What you're saying is, I don't like my options, when others don't even have that choice. I don't know if you know this. Again, I don't want to make you feel guilty, but in a little bit. I grew up in a third world country. When I moved here, I was 15 years old. I walked into a warehouse where they store food called supermarkets, and we're like, this is heaven. There's like options upon options upon options. Americans, wake up. You're so blessed. Stop whining and complaining. You woke up, you had a roof over your head, you have options. God, I don't know which cereal I have today. 90% of the world says, oh, look how rich they are. Some of y'all got up and went, honey, which car we're taking to the church? Some are like, what's a car? I'm not kidding. I'm trying to make us feel guilty. I'm trying to elevate our perspective of thinking. Some of y'all are like, don't like these options for president. Neither do I. Some people are like, what's a president? What's democracy? We got a choice between Burger King and McDonald's. No matter what we choose, diarrhea is coming. This message is not brought to you by McDonald's nor Burger King. This is why we got to be careful with false worship. The Bible talks about false worship. When your heart is not attached to your worship. In other words, when your heart is not attached to what you're saying. In Isaiah The Bible warns his people about false worship. Look, he says, look, the Lord says, these people come near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. See, this is why worship is not singing songs. You can sing songs and not mean them. You can sing songs, but your heart is far from what you're saying. So worship is a lifestyle. It's how you live in your life. When I graduated from high school, the youth leader of the church gave me one of these things called a CD. Remember those things? It's like this round things that you used to put in your car and music came out of it. It was fascinating. But he gave me a worship CD, and I struggled with that. And I tried to play it, but my heart wasn't in it. But I was trying to respect the man, even though he's not in my car with me. I'm like, I gotta listen to it. He gave it to me. It's the Cape Verde you can't help it. And I struggled through that CD. Every song was like, oh, when is it gonna end? This is so hard. Why? Because my heart wasn't in it. You can't fake the funk. It's gotta come out of you. This same youth leader used to tell us all the time, he said, hey, garbage in, garbage out. Garbage in, garbage out. But 2 years later, I found Jesus, and that worship CD became an amazing thing in my life because now, spirit in, spirit out. Spirit in, spirit out. So funny, I just heard that Eminem released an album. And I'm laughing because he's like in his 50s now, yo. And I didn't listen to it, to be honest with you. I read a couple of lyrics, and I'm like, bro, you're in your 50s. You're still talking about the same things you were doing like 20, 30 years ago. I heard his daughter just got married. Shouldn't your lyrics change? Like you're still talking about the stuff you were doing 20, 30 years ago, still thinking you're cool at 50s. Shouldn't you be talking about like, I want to be a great grandfather? Like it's time to clean up your closet and become a great grandfather, Eminem, and take care of your little ones who are coming along the way. My friends, it's sad to see people grow in numbers but not grow in spirit. You still see it on the street corners. I see people all the time, 50, 60, still talking like hood times. And it's like, man, at some point, we got to grow up. Garbage in, garbage out. But spirit in, spirit comes out. The power of God comes upon you to worship him in spirit and in truth. Because Jesus said, you can either have a false worship or you can have a real worship. John chapter 4, Jesus having a conversation with the woman. And this woman was asking Jesus about worship, and she was Samaritan, and they had a place that they worship. The Jews had a place that they worship. And they're talking about what is true worship. And Jesus is like, no, woman, it has nothing to do with location. It has nothing to do with denominations. It has nothing to do with traditions. True worship looks like this. But the time is coming indeed. It's here now when true worshipers will worship the Father in what? And in what? The Father is looking for those who will worship him that way. True worship, friends, it's in spirit. Meaning, it has nothing to do with your religious tradition, the style of music. People get caught up on what style of music is worship. I have no idea what's playing in God's jukebox right now. For all I know, God could be listening to reggae music right now. God could be listening to Funana right now. I guarantee you, God speaks Creole. I'm telling you. Don't quote me on that. It's not the style of worship, it's your heart. It's a spirit-to-spirit conversation that can happen at any moment of the day, doing the things you enjoy. I don't know about you, one of my favorite places to just worship God is in my car. You know why? Please write this down. Because you are the worship leader of your soul. You're the worship leader of your soul. Like, these guys are great, man. They're doing a phenomenal job, but they're not the worship team. They're the music team. You are the worship team. When you bring your worship unto God, not just on Sundays, but on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. He says, when I run, I feel his presence. When you're doing the thing you enjoy, that's worship in spirit. And then in truth. That's important. You know why he's saying spirit and truth? Because he's saying you can, I told you in the beginning today, you can lie to yourself. If you're not careful, you will buy into lies. I love when people's like, I'm just being honest. You can be honest and still be wrong. That's what's funny. It's my truth. Well, that's the problem. It's your truth. What about the truth? You don't know the truth unless you connect to the truth. You have to know what the truth says. I don't know if you understand this, but as a believer, your opinion means jack. Well, it's just my opinion. Great, but what does the word say? Because that's the truth. This is the truth. That's the problem with us. We're trying to create a life where we feel like we know what we're saying and doing, but we never consulted with God about what he says. Wow. Jesus says you worship, true worship is in spirit, but also in truth. It's like you're aligned with his word. This is why you can't rely on your feelings or emotions, because your feelings will lie to you. You know, so many people were not in church today because they didn't feel like it. And guess what? You reap what you sow. You don't worship God on feelings. God is not a feeling. God is a reality that transcends your feelings, your emotions, your circumstances, your situations, your thoughts, your feelings, all of it. God is above all of that. You know what false worship is? Well, I didn't like the song we did at church today. You know why that's false? Because we ain't worshiping you. I didn't like what pastor had to say. Too bad you're stuck with me. Because we're not here to worship each other. We're here to worship God and bless each other in the process. You are the worship leader of your soul. The Psalms, I love the Psalms. You know why? Because these psalmists will say, so we're going to worship God. You got to give your soul commands, especially when you don't feel like it. You command your soul to worship. Can I give you a simple exercise? Get up in the morning and be specific about something that you're grateful for. Why? Because with the moment you wake up, you tell your soul and your mind, your spirit, we're going to focus on God and his will for our lives. It's very hard to be depressed and thankful at the same time. One's got to go. Telling you, the more you speak gratitude, the more you praise, the more you worship. Psalm 95, what does it say? He said, sing. He said, shout. He said, be thankful, but then he said, be obedient. Your worship is not true worship if you don't obey God. That's what true worship looks like. I told you about U2. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Written by Bono. But here's how he concludes the song. Verse 3 in the song. He says, I believe in the kingdom come. Then all the colors will bleed into one. Bleed into one. But yes, I'm still running. You broke the bonds. You loosened the chains. Carry the cross of my shame, You know I believe it. Question is, do you believe? Come on, stay with me as we pray. What you're looking for is a person named Jesus Christ, the God of the universe, who became a human being, who walked the earth, who showed us the ways of God, who died for the sins of the world, who rose again to defy death, Satan, and sin, who comes back from the dead and says, behold, all authority has been given to me. Go and preach the good news. That's who you're looking for. You can come to church till you're blue in the face, but have you surrender your life to Jesus Christ? Because he's he you're looking for. You can try to fit him into your plans, or you can fit into his plans. You either say, God, your will be done, or God says, then your will be done. And I believe that he brings us to places like today on purpose to say, will today be the day that you surrender your life to me? Because everything you're looking for is on the other side of your surrender and allowing him to lead you so you can have actually purpose in this life and in the life to come. Because he said, I'm the way, I'm the truth, and I'm the life. And no one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus, here's who you're looking for. Would you bow your heads with me and close your eyes? Why do we do that? To mind your business. So you're not distracted by anyone next to you. It's a personal decision to surrender your life to Jesus Christ. Not just come to church, but live in step with him, in tune with him, on purpose. And if you've never done that, this is your moment. I mentioned Eminem. This is your 8-mile moment. He needs to have his moment. I pray for him, I do. I feel bad for these guys, to be honest. They haven't found real purpose. And you can't give what you don't have. But today, you can receive life. And his name is Jesus. Would you pray with me if that's you? We're all going to pray this, but pray a prayer of surrender. Say, Father, I'm ready to surrender my life to Jesus Christ. I believe today that I need him to be my Lord and my Savior. So I ask you to forgive me of my sins. Jesus, come into my life. Be my purpose. Be my meaning. Be my way, my truth, and my life. I want to live in the fullness of your will. I gave you full reins of my life. Fill me with your Spirit. From this day forward, I will be at peace because you are my peace. You are my joy. You are my purpose. And I pray in your name, Jesus. And everyone said, can we thank the Lord this morning for his presence?